When can I train? Those are the words of Anderson Silva prior to his surgery on his broken left leg early Sunday morning. I'm Jim Basketball with the latest ESPN headlines. Of course, he suffered the gruesome fractured tibia and fibula of his left leg during his failed attempt to regain his UFC middleweight title against Chris Weidman on Saturday in Las Vegas. And we are joined by Brett Okamoto, mixed martial arts columnist for ESPN.com, with more insight. And Brett, I'm sure there were plenty of people Saturday that thought this might be the end of the road for him as a fighter, yet he asked that question. What do you think his chances are that he actually steps in the octagon again?
Well, it sounds like the chances of it happening are pretty good. If he's asking, before he heads into a surgery, what his chances are of returning to the gym, and not even what his chances are, when can he return to the gym, you got to think that that coming back into the cage is on the mind of Anderson Silva. Now, that could mean just when can I get back in the gym? Am I going to ever be able to train again, because he loves mixed martial arts? But I took it as, when can I get back in the gym to start training for a fight? And of course, you think that a fighter as great as Anderson Silva is going to think that way, immediately when it happens. But apparently, in the day since, he's been saying the same thing. He wants to know when he can train. And it sounds like he can train pretty soon. It's not as long as you might think. If anybody who saw this injury, might think that he would have trouble walking for a pretty long time. But in actuality, he just needs that bone to heal in the next 3 to 6 months. And according to the physician who operated on him, Dr. Steven Sanders from the UFC, he could be back in the gym by 6 months from now.
Leg kicks are a big part of his offensive attack, not to mention the fact that his left leg could be vulnerable on the defensive end of things if and when he does step back in the octagon. How do you suppose that could compromise his success if he does return?
Yeah, I really look at it from an offensive standpoint. Anderson Silva's kicks are part of what makes him so terrific, and you would think that throwing a hard leg kick would be the last thing he would want to do coming off of an injury like this. And Dr. Steven Sanders said that really there's not a lot of concern about that, though. They inserted the titanium rod into his broken tibia bone, and that rod is 11.5 millimeters in diameter. And once the bone fuses together and it heals, it should be just as strong as it was prior to the injury. So from a medical standpoint, it doesn't sound like Anderson will have much to worry about. It's a psychological standpoint. It's also some of the soft tissues, the muscles and the skin that were around the area that actually bended in that awkward way when he was injured. You got to worry about how those heal. But in the bone itself, supposedly, it will be just as strong as it was before.
Brett, you talked about Dr. Sanders' optimistic outlook, 3 to 6 months for recovery, 6 to 9 months for resuming training. But this is a fighter that's 38 years old as we speak. So how much does that age factor in a possible successful comeback?
Well, the actual physical healing of the bone, age supposedly does not matter. It will heal at the exact same rate as if Anderson Silva was 28 years old. Bones just heal at a pretty standard rate, regardless of how old the person is. Now, in terms of getting back into the gym and returning to an elite fighter, certainly you would think that he would have a better chance of doing that at age 28 than 38. But Anderson Silva has defied odds his entire career. So if medically and physically he can recover from this, this guy is such a workhorse in the gym. He could get into the gym and get back up to a pretty high level, I believe. But you're looking at I think all of these scenarios are pretty optimistic that the doctor outlined. If you're looking at when could Anderson Silva possibly be in the octagon again, I think you got to look at probably about a year, a little over a year. By that time, he would be nearing 40 years old, which fighters start to decline at that age anyway. So the age might not have a factor in the terms of the bone healing, but I think it does play a factor into Anderson Silva coming back and looking like Anderson Silva again.
Brett Okamoto covers mixed martial arts as a columnist for ESPN.com. Brett, thanks for the insight.
Sure, Jim.
Again, the all-time UFC record for consecutive wins is occupied by Anderson Silva. That's 16 consecutive wins. He won the UFC middleweight championship in October of 2006 and defended that title 10 consecutive times. You can read more about this story right here on ESPN.com. But with the latest ESPN headlines, I'm Jim Basketball.